Now I'm going to hang the hem, so I'm going to take my weight off and I'm going to remove my buckle so that it makes it easier to hang the hem. I put my hand in the middle and I just pull up carefully. You don't want to lose what you have done off the needles. And I'm going to go find my first stitch, which is right here. This is my first stitch. Because of there's no loop here to hang, I take this first stitch right on the right side of the orange. I'm going to hang that on my first stitch after the hash mark on the right hand side. And you can pull it up. And then you're going to hang on every needle after that. You're going to take this loop, right like that, and try not to split it, just like I did. And you're going to hang. And every time you go to hang the first stitch in between the gap, you'll see that it's a bigger loop. That's your first stitch to hang on the next set of 5. 2. I use a little tension here just to keep it from going off falling off the needles. This is how you hang a hem. Again, here's the wider one. It's going to go on the first one. It's a good idea to have light when you're doing something like this. You can clamp a light to your table, or there's lights that you can get that clamp right onto the machine. And the Erlbachers have made a little plate that attaches to the mast, and you can use that. And it really helps. It shines the light right down in the center of the cylinder. We're coming to the area here where you see that the needles are down inside the cylinder. So I'm trying not to get in the way of the camera here. I'm going to push down on this and knit a little past it. In fact, I'm going to try to go up to 12 o'clock, like that, and continue hanging the rest of the hem. Always make sure that when you're deciding on a contrast yarn, make sure that it's a good contrast yarn, good contrast, so that it's easy to pick up your stitches and see what you're picking up. If it's too close, it's hard to figure out which stitch you're supposed to pick up to hang your hem. If you're using a 60 cylinder, this is the same setup. It's still exactly the way I did it by removing the third stitch after the right hash mark. It works out the same. The yarn that I'm using is from Cascade, and it's called Heritage Silk. It's a fingering weight yarn. It feels really good. Okay, now last guy here. That's my last stitch. There. Now I'm going to hang my weights on again because I've just hung my hem. Try to hang your weight as evenly as possible so that you get a good pull all the way around, so it's You don't want it uneven. Feels nice and tight all the way around. I'm going to knit one complete round, and of course make sure your latches are always open. That's probably the most important thing you can remember. And this is putting it back to 1 stitch on every needle instead of 2. When I hung the hem, there were 2 stitches on every needle. Now we're back to 1 stitch on every needle. Now I'm going to knit 65 rows. I usually do a 70 row leg, and then I'm going to put my needles back in 5 rows before I start my heel. So I'm going to put my row counter back to 0, and I'm just going to crank for 65 rows. So I guess if I was doing a live demonstration, I'd ask if there were any questions. This is just one of many ways to make a sock. This is just the way I enjoy making a sock. I like the 5x1 rib, but there's lots of other ways. So that's why I called it Mock Rib Directions My Way. I don't necessarily like to go fast. I like to feel the machine. It's almost like you can feel that everything's going well. Sometimes if you go too fast, you're more liable to drop a stitch. I kind of like to just enjoy it. I enjoy the feel. Also, because I'm knitting from a ball, sometimes it gets caught on the bottom here and it's stopping me a little bit. I want to make sure that it's all coming off okay. Not if it gets caught on the ball, it's going to knit those stitches tight, and then that can make the difference in the sock. One sock to another, it can be different size just because you're getting stuck on the bottom. Okay, I've knit 65 rows. I'm going to stop at 12 o'clock. And I'm going to replace the needles from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock on the bottom, because that's where my heel is going to go, and I want to make sure that all my needles are in work position. I also leave the needle in up position while I am replacing this to remind myself to transfer the stitch. So you have 6 needles. So this is the side that the heel is on. So I'm going to put the first needle down, I'm going to pull out this needle here, and I'm going to grab the heel of the stitch below, and I'm going to transfer it over to the empty needle. By doing this, you alleviate holes. There's a little heel bump, call it the little bump of the stitch below, and just lift that over, and you can do it with your weights on. If it seems like it's too tight, just lift up on your weight a little bit or take a weight off, but you should be able to do it. One more. There we go. So now we're going to knit 5 more rows. We're going to go to 70. Again, always making sure your latches are open. And now I'm going to stop at 6 o'clock.